Shalom and welcome back. Grab your Bibles, your pen, your notebook, your paper, and let's get started. My name is Patrice Robinson. Welcome to Reconcile the Kingdom, where we're working towards becoming a harmony of the whole word of truth. And I appreciate you coming by on today. Last week, we have covered introduction and we talked about the background and we went over chapter 1 of book of Esther. I will leave that in your description box. Today, we are on chapter 2 and we're still in these two areas of study. Understand the contents, and is there any other book that or any other writing or any other letter that we can use to help us get clarification and full understanding of the book of Esther? So we are in chapter 2 and I have my Esther here, and we're going to read chapter 2, and we're going to go we're just going to read the first verse here. And these things, when the wrath of King Hadassah was pleased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Well, the king began to realize, it sounds like to me, what he had done and missed the queen who he has removed from her position as queen. And we discussed this last week. He was under the influence of wine and he called her to come in front of the men to show her beauty with her crown on her head, and for some reason she decided that that's not something that she wanted to do. Could be because he was under the influence, but for whatever reasons she did not listen, and it cost her position. And remember in chapter 1 we was talking about that the feast that they were doing and getting prepared for, there was two feasts, one 180 days and one 7 days, getting prepared for their battle against the Greeks. Once again, you can take a look at chapter 1 from last week. Verse 2 through 4. Then said the king's servant, the minister unto him, let there be a fair virgin sought for them, and let the king appoint officers in all the province of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins into Susan the palace, to the house of women, and to the custody of Haggai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things be purification be given to them, and let the maiden which pleased the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, so he did so. Now he's looking for a replacement for the queen. So they're gonna go throughout the entire kingdom looking for someone that will replace the queen, even amongst his concubines that he already has. He's looking for a replacement for someone to take her position. And of course, Haggai is going to be the one who's going to look over the treatment of purification that they will be going through, and we will read more. Let's go on. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jorah, the son of Shema, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Now the group of people were called Jew at this time, referring to the tribe of Judah. Remember, this is the northern kingdom that was predominantly from the tribe of Judah, and then the Benjamites and whoever else that was left in the kingdom that returned from Assyria, from the southern kingdom. But anyway, this was the group of Jews. Now Mordecai was one of the families, again from the southern kingdom of Judah. Mordecai was a descendant of Saul. How do we know that he is a descendant from Saul, the king? Well, you would say, Patrice, how did you get that? Because verse 5 doesn't say that, but verse 5 gives us information of his descendants. So this is how you're able to connect him, as he's a descendant from Saul. So we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 9 verses 1 through 3. Now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abali, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechothia, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. Stay with me. 2 Samuel chapter 16 verse 5. And when the king David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed, and still as he came. Now we just read two chapters, two verses, one out of 1 Samuel, one out of 2 Samuel. But did you recognize has the name, like 1 Samuel 9:13, whose name was Kish. Did we not see Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, in verse 5? And we also see it in 2 Samuel 16:5, the house of Saul the king, whose name was Shimei. So these names helps you relate Mordecai to the king of Saul by the names. This is why their names are in this place, to understand who is who, what bloodlines, so you understand what's going on. So even this information from verse 5 is highly important in the play of the book of Esther, and you will see it as we go along. But again, Mordecai is from the tribe of Benjamin. He is from the house of Saul. We're going to continue on. Verses 6-7. Who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jecon, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. Now do we know who was the last king of Judah before they went to Babylon. We also learned Esther's birth name. Her birth name is Hadassah. She was given a Persian name as Esther. So we also learned a little bit more about her parents just from these verses. So how do you verify if this is true? Well, these verses gave us a part of who was the last king before they was carried on to Babylon. And you can find that in Jeremiah chapter 1. The Lord showed me, behold, 2 best figs was set before the temple of the Lord after Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the princes of Judah, and with the carpenters and with the smiths from Jerusalem have brought them out of Babylon. So this is how you verify the scriptures. So a lot of times I don't just read the chapter in the beginning. When I first read a book or letter or writing, I just read it and then I dig deeper into it. So we're going to go on to verses 8-11. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together into Shushan, the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought, Hadassah, also into the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her 7 maidens, which were meant to be given her out of the king's house, and he prepared her for her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. So she got the best spot. Esther, Hadassah, had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked around every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther, Hadassah, did and what should become of her. Again, Hadassah, Esther, and Mordecai was still in Persia and did not return back to Jerusalem like many of Yehovah's people. So although we read in the introductions, and as we understood previously, that this book comes before the first people who went from exile and went back to Jerusalem, the first group of people under the rule under Zerubbabel, and then we have the second that left with Ezra. But however, Mordecai and Esther both times are still under the kingdom of Persian because some people decided to stay. Hadassah, Esther upheld the decree like most of the women that was in the Providence and went to the palace, and she was able to find favor like many of Yehovah's people, and she kept her nationality, who she was, that she did not share that she was a Jew. She kept it a secret. Verses 12-14. Now, when every maiden's turn was come to go to the king of Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manager of women, for so were the days of their purification accomplished, to wit 6 months of oil, myrrh, and 6 months of sweet odors and other things is for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women into the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned to her second house of the women, to the custody of Hadassah, the king's chamberlain, and which kept the concubines. She came unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. So this is what I call a parentheses within the parentheses in the book of Esther. These verses are explaining the process of the beauty treatment and how the king will provide all her, so once she becomes queen, all her needs will be provided, the desires for her heart. This also sheds some light on how the women were to be available for the king's pleasure at night, and they return back to their own house in the morning. The key to point to remember is the writer is giving us some insight of why a woman is not allowed to come before the king without them being requested by name. Verse 15 through 18. Now when the turn of Esther, Hadassah, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go into the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all of them that looked upon her. So Esther, Hadassah, was taken to King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women. She obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the province and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Here we learn a little bit more about Hadassah, Esther's parents, at least the father's name, who was Mordecai's uncle, which makes Hadassah, Esther, his cousin. She was taken to the king's palace on the 10th month Tebeth, which is around December of January for the biblical month. She was highly favored and ended up being the chosen one who replaces Vashti as queen out of all the women in the Providence that he looked up on. And then there was a banquet in her name at that time. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up with him. Here we have this. Here's another parenthesis, I will say. The writer's getting you prepared for the next scene to kind of help you understand Mordecai's hangout in the king's gate. Sitting at the king's gate is something that is very common. You read it throughout the Bible. Remember, Lot was sitting at the city gate, Genesis 19:1. Now 2 angels came to Solomon in the evening as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. Again, this is where the elders would gather and the community leaders will gather at the king's gate. Another example is Ruth 4:11. And all people were at the gate, and the elders said, "We are witnesses." 21 through 23. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Tersha, and those which kept the door were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it to Esther the queen, Hadassah. And Hadassah certified the king therefore of Mordecai's name. And when an inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out, therefore they were both hanged on the tree. And it was written in the book of Chronicles before the king. Now this is not the book of Chronicles of the children of Israel's book. This is the Chronicles of the Kings under Persian, which probably where Esther information was written too. This was a benefit for Hadassah, not letting her nationality know. So who knows if those two that was going against king knew that Mordecai was a family member of Esther. He may not have known this information. By her keeping it a secret according to Mordecai, she was able to save the king's life, and it was recorded. So let's go go over the two principles that we were looking for is understanding the contents. And I think we got a great understanding of the contents. And did we use any of the writings or books to give us connection, a clarification of chapter 2? And I would say yes. So we went over Genesis, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and Ruth to get some information. And we kind of learned more about the biblical parentheses. So we found out who Mordecai was kin to. He was from the tribe of the Benjamin, and he was connected to Saul. So that was something that I would have never found out unless I was following the bloodline, the names. I'm not good at pronouncing these names, these cities and these countries, but I do my best. I seem to get better at pronouncing them the more that I continue to try to read the Bible. But as following that name, Kish, we was able to find that he was related to Saul. And we was able to find out through the book of Genesis and Ruth that what Mordecai was doing when he was sitting at the king's gate was very common. You will find a lot of leaders and community leaders who was at the gate, and we was able to find that root through first mention in Genesis, and also we found that in the book of Ruth. I hope you enjoyed the biblical content. You would hit that subscribe button, comment, and share this video as a way of you showing your support. I will see you on tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. as we go through chapter 3 of the book of Esther. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah shine his face on you and give you his favor. May he shine his face towards you and give you his peace. In the name of Yeshua, amen. Thank you.